I've made some mistakes in my life and some very serious mistakes, and I never intended that anyone be harmed, and for these I am truly sorry, but I've been badly injured myself.
Pedigo pleaded guilty to luring 4 young men to his condo, injecting them with a pre-anesthetic drug in the guise of giving them a hepatitis B shot, and sexually molesting them.
Shots fired, 245, shots fired, very location.
Dr. Pedigo confronted the officers and agents with a fully loaded and cocked .45 caliber semi-automatic handgun.
After months of silence, Dr. Randall Pedigo talked more about his own suffering than the impact his sexual battery has had on his victims' lives.
At this time, all I can really do is pray for them, and I assure you I do that.
The thoughts of what might have occurred have to linger in their mind, and it's very, very difficult for them.
Hi, everyone. I'm Robin Wilhoit, your host. And this episode of Behind the Headline takes us into a disturbing and complex scandal that rocked Knox County. Former medical examiner Dr. Randall Pedigo, he became the center of a criminal case that involved sexual abuse, a shootout, and then eventually his reckoning. We're going to walk you through this timeline from the moment the allegations emerged to the time that the officers arrived at his home, to the shooting, to his eventual plea deal. But we begin on the afternoon of June 22nd, 1994, when TBI agents and Knoxville police arrived at Pedigo's West Knoxville condominium, approached him to talk to him. This is what played out, the report from WBIR reporter Charles Denny. Take a look.
The police called 911, and soon Dr. Randall Pedigo was taken away on a stretcher, transported to his workplace, the UT Medical Center. Pedigo was well known amongst his neighbors at the Cherokee Bluff condominiums. It wasn't an unusual sight to see him talking to police because of the nature of his job. But this day, residents couldn't help but notice the large number of police cars and agents on the grounds. Pedigo was spotted talking to authorities, and a short time later, neighbors heard gunfire.
We hear this, like 4, 5, 6 shots. And so we looked out, and there was just all of this hustle bustle going on. But of course, we didn't come outside. We didn't want to get in the middle of it, but we sure stood at the door and watched.
Pedigo was apparently about to be taken away by authorities. He asked to go back inside to change clothes, but then slammed the front door behind him.
And the officers made entry into the condominium by kicking the door in. They went downstairs in the condominium where Dr. Pedigo confronted the officers and agents with a fully loaded and cocked .45 caliber semi-automatic handgun, at which time one of the TBI agents fired, striking Dr. Pedigo several times.
The TBI headquarters in Nashville confirms Agent Steve Richardson of Knoxville shot Pedigo. He is on administrative leave with pay while the incident is investigated. That's standard procedure for something like this. Meantime, authorities served 2 search warrants, one at Pedigo's condominium, the other at his UT office. Chuck Denny, Action 10 News Today.
We have a lot to dig into, for sure. So with that, I want to welcome 2 people who covered many aspects of this story. Joining us is former News Sentinel reporter and current WBIR chief investigative producer John North, and former News Sentinel photographer Michael Patrick. Thank you both for being with us to talk about this story. Just watching those stories, going back in time, it brings back a lot, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, I'm looking at Michael and I'm thinking, wow, there were a whole lot of stories that happened when we were working at the News Sentinel.
Especially in the 90s.
The 90s were kind of nutso, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And this was just one example.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we delve into the case, let's talk about Randall Pedigo, Randy Pedigo. He was a very well-known person in Knox County, well-connected.
Yes. Yeah, he was well-respected, well-connected. He was known all over up and down East Tennessee in law enforcement circles. He hung out in law enforcement circles. He was good friends with our sheriff, Tim Hutchison, at the time. He had been the medical examiner since 1983, so 11 years at the time that this happened. He was a surgeon at UT Med Center, and he was a sportsman. He loved to shoot. Yeah. He also liked to fly. He did a whole lot. He was probably, I hope this doesn't sound sort of cheap to say it, but he was living a pretty amazing life at the time.
Yeah. Had you, prior to this, had any encounters with him on other stories that you can recall?
On the normal stories where he would be the medical examiner.
Yeah.
And you would run into him. But and he was quite the gun enthusiast. I knew several people who shot with him regularly. And so he was everybody's friend.
Yeah.
And, everybody knew Randy.
Yeah, even journalist friends, even,
yes,
photojournalists, you never had any,
Oh, gosh, no. No, it was a shock
issues.
at what was going on. In fact, if we move into that, that's the biggest question that I get when people talk about this is how in the world, did you get there that quick?
Okay, let's move along then, because we want to show a picture in just a moment that really encapsulates what happened, that you captured. So it's this day in June. How did you both get heads up that something is going down?
Yeah, how did we know? Did Jacobs get a tip?
or Tom Chester, who was the star newsman of this town. He knew everything.
Well, Tom was
awesome.
I don't know the answer to that, and maybe it was Tom and maybe it was Don, and I should have called Tom before we did this. But I got to tell you something. I remember Randy Nichols being in the office that morning.
He was the DA.
Correct. He's the DA at the time, and he was talking to Harry Moscas, who was our editor. Now, I don't know anything. Maybe it's unfair to point out Randy, but I came in and I covered the DA's office. I covered the courts, and I was like, oh, what's Randy doing here? And looking back, they knew that morning that they were going to be talking to him. They knew they were going to be talking to Pedigo because the tip had come in at around, I don't know, in the dark of the night, in the middle of the night, this had all gone down, and they were already sort of making arrangements of, we got to talk to Dr. Pedigo, and I don't think I'm going to be able to handle the case, i.e. the DA is not going to be able to handle the case because of, we got to recuse ourselves and bring somebody else in. So I don't know who did it, but they knew hours before this happened, and this is really important, they knew. And they told you, okay, here's the plan, hours before this all went down.
I was told to go to the KPD parking lot. And
did you know why at this point?
I only knew this, that they said, go over to the KPD parking lot, find a place to park, and watch that back door because they're going to bring Randy Pedigo in handcuffs.
Okay.
And we need a picture of that. So went to the parking lot. And I sat there for 4 hours in my car, in the company car.
A lot of waiting.
Were you talking to Jack Kirkland?
I don't remember who.
I don't
remember who at the office was telling me that. But at some point, hours later, they called me and said, "Move. You're going to move to UT Hospital. Go back to the emergency room as close as you can get to the door to the morgue, which is where his office was, and wait there. They're going to arrest him at his office."
How long were you there?
I was there for over an hour after I moved from KPD over to the hospital.
5 hours in now of waiting.
Yeah,
of waiting.
And all I knew is, he's going to be in handcuffs. And so, which is, stakeouts are horrible, as you know, anyway.
Yeah, they are.
And
sometimes amount to nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so that's where I was in my company car listening to the scanner when the gunfire broke out, and they're screaming on the radio, "We need an ambulance. We've got shots fired." And and
this was at his condominium. So you heard this on the scanner.
Yes,
shots fired.
Which, as you know, from there, you don't even go back out to the road. You go down, turn on Cherokee, and then up Cherokee Bluff and the condos. Mm-hmm. That's how I was there so fast, because I was sitting and waiting at his office at the hospital.
You're like a quarter mile away or a half mile away at the most.
At most, yeah.
So you hear that. You get to the scene. Take it up from there.
And so I'm standing there waiting, not sure if I'm even at the right place. And Donnie Sams, a KPD officer, motorcycle guy, comes running out. And he sees me, and I've never forgotten the look on his face that here I am standing with shooting pictures of him as he comes out after a gun battle with the medical examiner, and he starts screaming at me, "Get out of here! Get out of here!" And
we hear that a lot.
Yeah, yes. And so, in fact, one of the pictures is here of Donnie grabbing his tape to put up a police tape and telling me I need to leave. And, we've joked about it since because, you don't hold things like that against somebody because, they're, and especially that day, they're doing their job, and then there I am, and they, it was.
And you, I mean, once again, right there when the action is playing out, I want to talk in a moment about the incredible pictures you were able to capture as they brought Pedigo out. But let's talk about what played out when the FBI and Knoxville Police.
TBI.
Yes. TBI and Knoxville Police knocked on his door. They wanted to talk to him, right? Talk to him.
You're right. Well, keep in mind, contextually, they all knew him.
Right.
And they knew him as Doc, some of them, and he treated some of them. Some officers with KPD, he was their doctor. So he was part of this very tight-knit circle of people who all were involved in the same kind of aspect of work, law enforcement. And he knew all of them. So their initial tip is this 16-year-old kid has said he spent the night over at Pedigo's condo up there, as Michael described, Cherokee Bluffs, which is up above the river. And this weird accusation has suddenly emerged. So you can just imagine the kinds of conversations that were happening before they decided that we've got to confront him. It's sort of like, oh, wow, okay.
And this 16-year-old was alleging.
So the 16-year-old was somebody who was interested in medicine and what Dr. Pedigo did. And he had been introduced himself to Dr. Pedigo and expressed interest in wanting to know about the medical profession. What we didn't know at the time was the kid was sort of falling directly into Dr. Pedigo's trap because he'd been doing this all along. We didn't know it, but he'd been doing this all along with young men and teenage boys, where he would be like, oh, do you want to go around and do rounds with me at UT Med and see what I do? Or let's drive around in my Ford Bronco, county issued, and we'll wait on a call, and maybe we can go on a call together. So this 16-year-old was just the latest person who had either expressed an interest or, Dr. Pedigo had said, if you're interested, here's kind of what I do.
Yeah. And one of the things that he would do, according to the court records, was that this kid had been on rounds with him.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Pedigo explains to him, well, I need to give you a shot, a hepatitis shot, because you may come in contact with this blood. And so that is how he it just made perfect sense.
It wasn't a hepatitis shot.
No, apparently not.
Not really. That was, maybe early on when he was doing this, he did that, but not really. And this was 2 days before when this all had started with the kid, with the young man. And then he had awakened in the middle of the night, and then he had seen this male, naked, hairy man sort of hovering over him. We need to make clear the shot was Versed, which was a sedative to put people to sleep.
Not hepatitis.
No. How Pedigo got it has always been a little bit iffy. Later on, we would learn that maybe he'd been ordering something like this from a South Carolina firm himself on the side. But he gave the kid a shot. The kid goes to sleep, and then Pedigo undresses him.
And then this is the crux of it all. So this is the allegation, and that brings us back to Cherokee Bluff and the encounter with law enforcement that went very badly. How did it play out that shooting actually happened? What was that interaction that ultimately led to gunfire?
What I know is once they'd finally, as Michael told us, decided they were going to confront him up at Cherokee Bluffs, they go up, and there are several KPD officers, and there's Steve Richardson with the TBI, And knock, knock. Hey, Doc. Yeah, we need to talk to you here if we can, please. And he's in scrubs, apparently coming just off a shift or something that afternoon. And he's like, well, okay, fellas, that's fine, but can I change? And so they're like, yeah, sure, that's fine. And again, they know him, he knows them, so there are some courtesies, right, Michael?
Exactly, yeah.
You're going to get some courtesies,
Yes.
as opposed to just being thrown in the back of a police car. So they go into the condo. By the way, in reading back on this, I think he had guns, which we're going to talk more about, and I think at least one officer found at least one gun tucked away and took it away to make sure that it could be out of play. But Pedigo knew where all the guns were in his house. So he clearly was, we know now, sort of stalling. He was trying to figure out what he was going to do because he realized, uh-oh, the jig is up now. They know something is going to happen. I'm in trouble. And he knew where all his guns were and where they were hidden. And he's trying to be cagey and what have you. And he's like, okay, I'm changed. And they walk out of the condo, but he's the last person at the door. He pushes them away, jumps back in the condo, locks the door, and runs downstairs to where he's got, as Michael said, or maybe you said, a loaded .45.
Mm-hmm. And then the shots ring out.
Yeah.
And Michael, we know you are on the scene, have been there moments after that. And then a picture that you capture as they are bringing him out on the stretcher because he was hit. He was hit in his eye.
Right eye.
And I know a second shot.
Wrist
yes.
and chest.
Exactly.
With 5 shots. He was shot five times.
5 or 6. I think he said 6, but it's 5 or 6. It was a lot.
So this is playing out, and your job is to capture it playing out. Tell us about that experience. I mean, as a photojournalist, you had to be like, wow. You look for those opportunities, but that opportunity presented itself to you directly.
Well, I didn't. Of course, I didn't see any of that. I'm
but
down
you saw
at
it.
his office,
Right.
down at the hospital, and expecting them to walk him out in handcuffs. That was my assignment.
Right.
And so nobody, I don't think anybody, clearly, having spoken with some officers in the time since then, nobody expected that. And so I'm up there just trying to figure out when I pull up that I'm at the right place and what's going on. And so when one of my coworkers has kidded me since, you were sent to get him in handcuffs and you didn't do that.
You got him on a stretcher. Let's take a look at this picture. This picture in newspaper world, which of course I'm broadcast, but I do have some understanding of when it's above the fold and it's taking up most of the front portion of it. That's significant.
It's a huge story.
Yeah,
It's an extraordinary picture because he's very bloody. He's shirtless. They've been trying to work on him. They found him on the floor, lying on the floor of his condo, bleeding, and he's telling them that he can't breathe and he's choking, and he had also told somebody, "Finish me." We learned that later. But he's been shot in the eye, as you said. He's bloody all over the place. It's graphic. But it's an extraordinary moment that you have to show people.
Yeah, God's it. I mean, there's and that was the only thing that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Picture-wise, that was all I had to get.
Right.
So,
What are you thinking?
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
How do you keep your calm?
you
too?
tell me you're just shooting on instinct.
You're working.
Yeah, you're just hoping you're in focus.
Clearly,
And,
you were.
So it's nerve-wracking because there's nobody else is there. It was a weird. I still remember it as being so weird. There were a couple of people who lived there who were around when he finally brought him out on the stretcher, and it was still just me. Nobody else had gotten there because nobody else knew that was happening, and the people who knew were down at the hospital, I guess. Well, I was the only one down there.
Where does this stand in your body of work? Because, I mean, so much of, you have covered so many stories and captured so many moments. It is certainly one I have to think that stands out.
As just, being thankful that you did what you were needed to do at the moment. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a thing where you where you got to size it up and figure out what was happening. They come rolling out with him, headed for an ambulance, and I've got just a few frames to get something, and hope that you can see him and them headed out.
We want to take a quick break in our discussion to take us back in time to the day after the shooting. This is our report from then reporter Jennifer Leslie.
Knoxville police seized 97 guns during a search of Dr. Randy Pedigo's condominium. They also collected bags full of evidence in their investigation of allegations of sexual assault.
Well, we were looking for photographs, anything that we would normally look for at a crime scene, such as trace evidence of body hair, fluids, things of that nature.
A newly released police report details the allegations of sexual misconduct against a 16-year-old boy. The report shows early Wednesday morning, police were notified of a reported rape of a 16-year-old white male. The victim states he was given an injection by Dr. Randy Pedigo at Pedigo's residence and passed out. The victim states he later remembered waking up to find a large hairy man on top of him. Investigators were back on the scene today, along with the Hamilton County Attorney General, who's handling the case to avoid a conflict of interest. He says he won't comment on the findings of yesterday's search.
I'm not going to release evidence, potential evidence can be used in a trial beforehand. This isn't O.J. Simpson and it isn't California, so it just won't be done that way.
Pedigo was shot yesterday after police say he pulled a loaded, cocked, semi-automatic weapon on them. These are the 911 tapes of the incident.
Shots fired, 245, shots fired, their location.
Being on Delta, what's location?
3 Cherokee Bluff, give us a 47, give us a 47.
Pedigo has a history of fraud, deceit, and the illegal prescribing of drugs. And now the sheriff who stood by him through all of that is questioning Pedigo's future in light of this investigation.
At this point, I wouldn't see him staying as medical examiner.
Former Sheriff Tim Hutchison, well connected to Randy Pedigo. A lot of people were. Can you recall how the reaction after this all played out from people?
I think everybody was just in disbelief that, no, who? It was like nobody believed that, it's a long career that
that it would end effectively, I guess, in this case. But we talk about the 16-year-old victim. There were more victims.
Right. So moving on, once the police were able to get into the condo, they began to discover what would prove to be incredibly significant evidence, because what was going on when Dr. Pedigo would drug the young men who would spend time in his condo was he would often wait for them to go to sleep, and then he would take off their clothes and he would take photographs of them. We don't know what else he did, but you can draw your own conclusions about that. By the way, when the 16-year-old was taken to the hospital for an exam, the verification was made about the sedative, but I don't think we ever reported any confirmed sexual abuse.
I don't think so.
But there were dozens, scores, more than 100, more than 150 photographs found, like in a filing cabinet that had been locked away. There were Polaroids. There were 35 millimeter pictures. The Polaroids, for those of you that don't remember, was you have a camera, and I can take a picture right now, and presto whammo, it'll develop right there in front of me, and it's about that big. And he had lots of Polaroids, and it wasn't just this 16-year-old young. Let me correct myself. I'm not sure that they ever found photographs of that person, but they found photographs of other young males.
And you actually spoke to one of the victims.
Yeah, so this all went down, as we've been discussing, in June of '94, and it actually was resolved really quick. Mm-hmm. Did you cover, like, when he would go to court and all that? Do you remember doing that?
I believe I did.
I'm sure that you did, but and Bob Ritchie was his lawyer.
Yes.
But this thing got resolved really pretty quickly. It was resolved by, I think, the end of March of 1995, which is at speed of lightning back then for Knox County, but speed of lightning for any kind of a high-profile case like this. He pleaded guilty, but we learned that there were 6, 8 young men, maybe total, ranging in age from 15 to the early 20s. I think that the police found at least a couple guys who did not want to cooperate.
There were a lot more, and the majority of them were, not the majority, several of them were medical students, and they said, nope, don't want that.
That's right.
Be done with it.
It's over. You get somebody else to talk to you.
Yeah, that happened a lot. But so I don't remember quite how it happened. You and I were talking before we sat down to do this podcast, and you were like, none of those young men ever talked, did they? I'm like, no, they didn't. And then I went back and I was looking at our coverage from the News Sentinel, and I'm like, wait a minute. I did a big story about all this in July of '95, and I did talk to one of them. I talked to an 18-year-old. We didn't run his name. We didn't run a photo of him, but he wanted to speak, and he was unhappy about how this had been resolved, and he felt like that Dr. Pedigo hadn't been properly held to account.
Were there warning signs, prior to any of this? Any red flags or anything that would have, I guess, made it less shocking, or was this just one of those things that it came out of left field?
I think it truly came out of left field, although there was an incident where I had a friend that called me who I'm not going to name, but had been I had worked with a lot and was changing professions and was wanted to be a private investigator. And they said that they called me and said, I'm scared for my life. I've got a client that says that somebody has done something to them, and it's so high up that I'm actually scared for my life. And it sort of blew it off. And I talked to him for a little bit, and I'm now certain that that was what that was.
Huh.
Wow.
You think it was one of his victims?
I think it was I think the parent of one of the victims had contacted them.
Yeah.
And so, yes, there were some, but as you can imagine, you're making an accusation against somebody who's,
powerful,
just very powerful.
I want to respond to your question.
Yeah.
Because again, a lot of this, Michael and I and people in the newsroom here at the News Sentinel and here in Channel 10 and elsewhere, we didn't know all of this. We didn't know what had been going on. Yeah. But by summer of '95, through court records, and once the case was resolved and we had access to the TBI file, which I looked at, what we discovered was, and we put this chart together for the paper, and I'd forgotten about this as well. We put a chart together. It's the print so small I can't read it. My eyes are. That's the way it is, folks. That's what happens when you get old.
30-some years.
I pulled out my magnifying glass last night to look at it. But here's what happened. We started putting it all together in terms of what he was doing in May of '94, and you could almost go day by day. And in this little chart from May to June, we identified what we call the victims, 6 victims of his interactions with them in this time period before the shooting.
We're just talking a couple of months.
Correct.
Then. You have 6
You're
victims.
talking about basically 6 weeks, roughly, 7 weeks. And it's like, and on this day he did this, and on this day he took this person around, and on this day he picked up this person, and on this day he flew this young man down to Chattanooga or what have you. So we didn't know, nobody knew, law enforcement didn't know, the young men didn't know what was going on, but a lot of them knew each other.
And it took the 16-year-old really to
yes,
bring this forth.
He's kind of an unsung hero in all of this.
Exactly.
He really is. I've always wanted to talk to him. We won't say his name. We knew his name. Right. We've always wanted to talk to him, but he was really the unsung hero.
We're going to get into the plea deal, but let's talk about the weapons. Michael, were you the one who took the picture? There's a picture of just a cache of weapons that they found in his
John showed me.
Condominium. We'll definitely show that to you. What was going back to that moment when you see that, and now look at it some years later, it kind of takes your breath away when you look at that many weapons.
And I think, that is, from what I knew then and since, that's probably only what was at his house. You know, he was quite the gun man. You know, he shot and took people, you know, all sorts of important people in town would go shooting. And he had some fancy guns, and he had some that you would never get to shoot otherwise. And so it was everybody's friend, you know.
Yeah.
He wanted to be in that circle and to do different things, and shooting with him was one of them.
Yeah.
The New Sentinel reported, and Don Jacobs was the outstanding police reporter that the paper had, that he had a machine gun.
Yeah, oh yeah. A Thompson submachine gun. And, you know, if you've ever watched Bonnie and Clyde, you know, it's, and everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people, you know somebody that owns one, you want to shoot it.
Yeah, and ultimately he falls victim to gunfire. I mean, it's Let's talk about, and John, you made this point. This all resolved, if you will, relatively quickly. In 1995, they struck a plea deal. Were you surprised by that?
Oh, probably not. I mean, as well plugged in as I think people in the newsroom were, Tom, Don, and other people, I'm not going to claim that to have that kind of connection. It sort of fell into my yard once there were charges filed and he was facing prosecution. I don't think anybody was terribly shocked. He had one of the very best lawyers in the best firm in not just Knoxville but in East Tennessee. It was then Ritchie, Fells, and Dillard.
Bob Ritchie.
And he had Bob Ritchie as his defense attorney, and Bob was hired pretty immediately after the incident at the condo. Bob was one of those people that you just kind of fell in love with because he was a very friendly, affable, kind man who also happened to represent incredibly powerful people.
Yes.
And you never would have known that. I don't know about you, Michael, but anytime I would see Bob at the courthouse, whether it was in the Pedigo case or another one, he would always say, "John, my friend, how are you doing today? It's always so good to see you." I mean, he's gone now. God bless Bob. He was taken from us way, way too young. But he represented Dr. Pedigo, so that was another thing. It's kind of inside baseball, but the fact that Dr. Pedigo got Bob Ritchie meant you better be crossing your T's and dotting your I's because he's going to catch any mistake. He's going to beat you legally in any regard if you are not all buttoned up. And I think once the state probably, and it was not Randy Nichols, our DA in Knox County, it was Gary Gerbitz out of Hamilton County that ended up getting the case by recusal. Once Gerbitz saw what the TBI and KPD had gathered and what the young men could say happened to them or not, because a lot of them never woke up. The 16-year-old is the only one that woke up in the middle of all this and said something weird's going on. Yeah. But they had photographs, and they had a lot of the young men were able to say, when they were shown these photographs, if you can imagine that, they were able to say, that's me. That's me. So the state had that case and got it resolved pretty quickly. I think he pleaded guilty to something like 8 counts total. And got a year in jail and something like 7 years on probation.
Well, we spoke with him after that plea deal was struck. This is our report from, once again, former WBIR reporter Jennifer Leslie.
I've made some mistakes in my life and some very serious mistakes, and I never intended that anyone be harmed, and for these I am truly sorry, but I've been badly injured myself.
After months of silence, Dr. Randall Pedigo talked more about his own suffering than the impact his sexual battery has had on his victims' lives.
They need to be put back together too, and at this time all I can really do is pray for them, and I assure you I do that.
Pedigo pleaded guilty to luring 4 young men to his condo, injecting them with a pre-anesthetic drug in the guise of giving them a hepatitis B shot, and sexually molesting them. Special Prosecutor Gary Gerbitz says a plea agreement was in the best interest of the victims, some of whom are left with emotional scars.
Especially since they were not willing participants and they were totally duped. And the thoughts of what might have occurred have to linger in their mind, and it's very, very difficult for them.
As part of the agreement, Pedigo's attempted murder charge was dropped. He was accused of pulling a gun on TBI agent Steve Richardson, who shot Pedigo 6 times after agents tried to question Pedigo last June. TBI agents stand by Richardson's actions even though the charges were dropped.
If Steve Richardson hadn't have reacted the way he did, he'd be dead.
Now Pedigo says he'll try to put his life back together after much suffering.
Now, I've been blinded, I've been crippled, I'm in daily pain, I'm going to serve a year in jail, and that's a lot of punishment.
I think that's enough, folks. Y'all take care.
Thank you.
Michael, I think your reaction would be a lot of people's reaction when you hear him say, you know, I'm a victim. Kind of shocking, would you say?
Yeah, I'd forgotten that he even said anything like that. That's
yeah, it's something for sure. I mean, John, were you in that scrum when they were?
I'm sure I was. Well, no, actually, I wasn't. I was looking back at clips, and I wasn't. Although I'm not sure I was terribly surprised by his response. And as we were talking, you know, I was thinking, part of the reason that maybe this case got resolved the way it did is you had male victims. If you had female victims, I think this might have been a whole different story in terms of how it got handled. And I think, candidly, in the male culture, a lot of people were like, you know what, I want to get as far away from this as I possibly can. And that played to his advantage. But, yeah, it's some may not agree with this, but it's hard to feel sympathy for somebody who schemed and planned and manipulated and did this over and over and over to 6 to 8 victims, maybe more. Later on, we would learn through civil litigation, when he was asked, well, when did you start doing this? He would say, oh, I think about 1992.
So imagine how many victims, you know, that many years
and again,
prior to 1994.
You know, scores of photographs in his collection those were his trophies. We talked to a psychiatrist who's like, well, those are his trophies.
Well, and you brought something up as we were watching this story. This really was not his first issue, if you will. Prior to, there was some allegations of drug misuse.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember that, Michael. I got here in '93, so a year before basically this all went down. But it had been something that the media had covered, where he had run into a problem with substance abuse. I think it was not just alcohol, but also abusing pills, medication that he had access to. And he had gotten into trouble with like medical professionals over this. And I believe there'd even been a case taken to the grand jury about this, and he was not, I repeat, not indicted. But that had happened before all of this, that he had a problem with substance abuse.
And he was not the only medical examiner who would deal with issues.
Yeah,
the one to come thereafter.
Yeah, subsequently in the 90s, we had a medical examiner who was a terrific person. I mean, you know her. You probably shot her on the stand and talked to her and ran into her, and I would talk to her. You know, I'd cover trials at Dr. Elkins where she had her own problem years later after this, dealing with this. Now, mind you, that kind of line of profession, I ain't interested in doing that kind of work, so I could sort of see where I might need a glass of wine at the end of the day just to kind of unwind, but whatever. We for a while there in the media community, we're like, what is up with medical examiners? But
Michael, this question for you. You've since retired.
Yes.
You put down the camera, at least professionally. When you look back over the course of your career, long, wonderful career, and documenting the history in many respects, what was it about the experience of being behind the camera, capturing history, that was so compelling and that stands out to you even to this day?
Partly this. I mean, the news events of Knoxville, I was usually there, you know, so I saw them and attempted to photograph them. I've photographed 8 U.S. presidents, you know, every president from Gerald Ford through Trump, and so I was very, very blessed career, you know, and I joke with people still to today that, you know, how bad can it be? They pay me to take pictures. You know, it's but then there were times when it was rough. You know, yeah. I also shot, was out there when James Carson and Matthew Baird were shot, and when I got out there, don't know how, don't want to know how, and when they got him out to the intersection where they felt like it was safe and they could bring a helicopter, I was there shooting the picture.
Bring
on
us,
the front.
go back to that story. What was the premise behind?
Well, they answered a call at a domestic call at
was that
trailer.
Skid?
No, way out in way deep Knoxville, Knox County, and
it's pre-me. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, the guy was the husband was waiting on him. He knew that his wife had called him, and it was an ambush, and they got shot. I think, I don't remember the exact details, but one of them, I think Matthew, was shot before he could even get his door open. So, I mean, the guy was shot, and so they. But it's one of those things. You do your best to capture a picture that tells, what was going on without. Try not to get in the way.
Were you at Cahaba Lane?
Help me.
Husky.
Zoo man.
Oh! I think mainly I covered the trial on that. I didn't.
I would have thought maybe you would have gone out for that one too, because that was another big one.
You can watch an episode on that and Behind the Headlines. Just go on Spotify, Apple, or
you covered
WBR
Job Corps.
Yes.
Because I've invoked your name for trial photos that you shot for that.
Yeah. I mean, there was always seemed to be something. It was.
We were talking about this, and we can all relate. The 1990s, for anybody who wasn't here, the 1990s, oh my, it was busy. And around here, it was nuts.
But you just recounted, Zoo Man.
And there's more.
Yes.
There's
I mean,
more.
and we're going to get them all here on Behind the Headline for sure. But I think as journalists, it's hard. It is hard to cover these stories that are gruesome, heartbreaking, disgusting, but that's what we are tasked with doing, telling the story and capturing the picture. We are the eyes and the ears of the public, and I'm proud of what we do, and I'm grateful for what you do and what you both have brought to this profession. So thank you for that, and thank you for being here to recount Randy Pedigo and just to give us your experience from covering that story. So
it was something. He's now gone. I think he died in like 2020.
Yeah. He has passed. He has passed. But thank you, gentlemen, very much. And you can watch past episodes of Behind the Headline. They are streaming right now on WBIR Plus, Apple, and Spotify. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next week for another episode of Behind the Headline.